Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jasmine, if this is the first video that you're watching. Welcome to my channel. I am a practicing witch, and we talk about all things witchcraft, paganism, folklore, spellcraft, things like that here on my channel. So if you're into stuff like that, you should definitely check out some of the other videos here on my channel. And I have my lovely co-host for our show.
Hello, it's me, Australia, and I too am a practicing witch, and welcome to the Daughters of Qayin.
Her. Daughters of Qayin is your, I won't necessarily say weekly, but we will say your frequently live stream where you can find us talking about blasphemous and unholy topics of all varieties. And in keeping with that theme, oh, I will say if you guys haven't already watched our Witches React, you need to go watch that. You need to go watch that. And also, we covered Hocus Pocus. You need to go watch that.
It was cute.
You need to go watch that. But in keeping up with kind of our unholy, blasphemous, and infernal narrative, pushing the Dark Lord's will on earth as it is in hell, we have our amazing guest who I'm so thankful that they have decided to come onto our show. I'm really excited for you guys to kind of get to know them and their work. So let me bring them on. Welcome.
Hello, I am Zoey Inferni. I am a non-theistic Satanist. I am a member of the Satanic Temple, and I am the art and design coordinator for the Satanic Temple Indiana congregation. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And let me tell you, her artwork is fantastic.
The art, honey, giving. It's giving.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
For real. Like, I literally asked Zoey before this, I was like, could we maybe put some of your art in my thumbnail?
Always.
So, okay, let's kind of get into the discussion here. So, you kind of introduced yourself there. What's your definition, like, of Satanism?
That is a great question, and I've been mulling this over. So I think it's important to know, as I answer this question, that I was introduced to Satanism through the Satanic Temple. So I think their general flavor and their general definition is kind of what I use. But as I move forward more in my satanic journey, I've started to develop a little bit of my own definition, and I'm seeking more to do that. But for the most part, for me, Satanism is using the mythological character of Satan to kind of, use as a mythological backdrop for your ethos and your morals. For example, the character of Satan in literature, as ascribed to the fallen angel Lucifer, the first one to stand up to the tyrant God Yahweh. I find that very inspirational, and everything to me that encapsulates Satanism.
Yeah, I definitely do too. And I feel like Australia, like a lot of witches of like a sort of trad current, I feel like can also relate a lot with this, with like our witch's devil. And like that's kind of one of the things I was talking to Zoey about is like the parallels. What do you think of that, Australia?
I do think that there are a lot of parallels. And a lot of tradcraft witches, I can't say all, but a lot that I know do work with the archetype of Lucifer. Whether that is working with Lucifer in a deific sort of way, or as similar to what you said, Zoey, as kind of like a backdrop to kind of prop their moral ethos against, is pretty common. And Jasmine and I have frequently like to say that we enjoy being adversarial. So that's definitely something that is part of our ethical ethos for sure.
Horns up, tits out behavior.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's great. And when it was introduced to me, it was very blasphemous. And I don't know if we want to work or talk a little bit about the Black Mass that I did right now.
Oh yeah, but we will touch on that for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to cover that. Let's talk about, okay, so let's talk about, you kind of came to Satanism through the temple. Like, prior to this, what was your religious background like growing up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't really have a religious background growing up. Um, my parents were never outwardly religious. They would always say they believed in God or whatever, but I never went to church. The only time I really went into a church was dragged along by friends. So I don't have that Abrahamic trauma, as I believe that's a term Jasmyne and Australia, both of you used in your
Yeah.
live streams before. And it's like, that's such a perfect way to describe it, because I see so many members of TST in our congregation that display that, but I never had that background. So growing up, my mom was kind of like I call her a grab bag of spiritualism. And I adore my mom. She's great, but it was never a straightforward type of religion. So, like, for example, in the house that I grew up in, we had a painting of Jesus on the cross. Under it was a Bible, and flanked beside it was a statue of Buddha, and then a statue of Ganesh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she was like,
So kind of new age?
when people say they're like,
Yeah.
I'm spiritual, like that.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
was she kind of like, or is she still kind of like new age? Like, is new age?
Not so much
No?
new age where she like dips into the occult, because I think that stuff scares her.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? But she believes in, if I had to describe her, I would maybe just, like a light witch, or a person who believes in good spirits, who wants to commune with good spirits. She definitely believes there's a God. She'll tell me, I talk to God all the time. And I'm like, well, what does he say? You need to tell me you have like God on speed dial, because that's pretty impressive. I have a lot of scientists that would want to talk to you about that. Yeah, so growing up, it was just kind of this grab bag of spiritualism. Yeah, she believes in ghosts, she believes in spirits, she believes in psychics. I don't believe in any of that, but psychics aren't banging on my door trying to take my rights away, and that's where I think the
I hope
difference
not.
is. Yeah,
That's true. Yeah, hopefully not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Your mom sounds really sweet.
She
Actually,
is so sweet. She really is. I might actually send her this later. So hi, Mom. I love you.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. So she's supportive of you and your work with the Satanic Temple.
She is, and for a few years I had hid that fact from her, but I actually recently came out to her as a Satanist a few months ago, and she was shocked. She was more shocked that I had hid it from her, which is kind of sweet. But it's such a big illustration to me that even when people don't have that extreme tie to Christianity, they still fear the word Satan or the devil or anything associated with that iconography, right? Because I tried to explain to her, I'm like, we don't actually believe in a literal Satan. To us, this is a metaphor. And she's just like, well, I just don't understand why you use the word. I just don't understand. Like, if you don't believe in Satan, why are you a Satanist? And she couldn't really grasp that concept. It took her a while. I think she kind of gets it. But yeah, the word Satan is a powerful, powerful word, and it sends chills down a lot of people's spines.
I can say that that's definitely something I've experienced as well, with talking about things from the standpoint of being someone who works with traditional witchcraft and works with the witch's devil and things like that. I completely understand that. And it's funny because something I've talked to Jasmyne about on a few occasions is that as an academically minded witch, I've read a lot of books. One of those books being the Bible. I've read several versions cover to cover. And I gotta say, the devil doesn't do a whole lot.
Right. Right.
Like, most of the atrocities that are committed in the Bible are committed by God.
By God.
And so it's always funny to me when I listen to people of an Abrahamic faith talk about the devil doing all these bad things. And I'm just like, where is this coming from?
Right.
Because it's not in your book.
Right. Yeah, it's this strange kind of cultural, social, thing that happened to Satan along the way. Like these stories got ascribed to the character Satan, and for some reason now evil stems from Satan, even though the original source of Satan isn't really that. I don't know. It's just strange.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That is really strange. And something I often cite when I talk to people about magic, especially with there being such a propensity for people to latch onto the idea of like white magic and black magic, or light magic and dark magic, is that doesn't really exist.
Right.
It's all a moral point of view. Good and evil is not a thing.
Right.
It's all a moral point of view. You could do something that to some people seem incredibly good, and to other people make you a monster. So
right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, good and evil are just kind of labels we put on behaviors, right? Same with Satan and all these characters. So yeah, I mean, coming out to her as a Satanist it was difficult, but I couldn't imagine, it being. I could imagine it being so much worse if she had been like, a Baptist or a Mormon. So I think I got out of it pretty unscathed.
that's awesome. I'm glad you have that level of support behind you too.
Yeah, me too. Hail Mom. We love moms in this stream.
I would love to hear. So, what is a satanic minister, and what does that process look like? Can you share a little bit about that? I would love to hear about that.
Sure. So the primary reason I became ordained through the Satanic Temple was I wanted a deeper connection to the TST Indiana community. And I think there was a really strong need for us to kind of participate, not just in the events that we normally do, like at Pride or our donation drives, but to really do more of the religious stuff, like rituals and getting together and, sharing camaraderie in the fact that we are Satanists, right? Because that is an extremely powerful moment when you build community with folks. So yeah, I was drawn to becoming a minister primarily for that reason. And to become ordained through the Satanic Temple, it's an online program. It's very thorough. The lessons are really interesting and super fun. I wish I had like my little notebook of notes I took while I was doing the actual coursework, but I don't think I have it on me. But essentially, it kind of goes through, a general history of modern Satanism, all the way back to what I would sort of describe as pre-Satanism, where you have a dominant religion, and then within that same region, you have smaller, marginalized minority religions. And of course, those minority religions are always somehow Satanists, right? So Satan is the scapegoat for evil, and Satanist has been the label that people use to attack and marginalize other people. So there's a lot of lesson plans on that. There was also lesson plans on kind of like building community, and is a satanic community and like a paradox or an oxymoron. I thought that was interesting. So yeah, it goes through a lot of stuff, and it was a really good program. And I'm super glad I did it. And now I get to do bomb-ass rituals for the congregation. So that's fun.
And how long did that program take you? Or like, is it like a year program, a multi-year program? Is it kind of like at your own pace? What did that look like?
It's definitely at your own pace. You have a time frame that you have to finish it in. So I think I got mine done in like, I don't know, a week. It's quick, a week. And then after you go through the lesson plan, you have to complete like a final, like your college final exam. and then you had to write an essay. And for my essay, I wrote the essay, and I also included an illustration because I'm bougie like that.
And like, so now you're a satanic minister, and you've been a satanic minister for how long?
Not very long, since April.
Since April.
So, yeah.
Okay. And what has that looked like, being a satanic minister?
You know, it's pretty cool, but I think it's still so new and fresh to me. I haven't really wrapped my head around it. I did a wedding actually a few months ago in New Albany, Indiana, and it was the first wedding in Indiana to be ordained by the Satanic Temple. I can't say it was the first satanic wedding because I'm sure satanic weddings have been happening, you know, just not on paperwork, right? So yeah, that was cool, and there's like this feeling of people are finally getting recognition for their religion. Like they could have it on paper, right? And it takes it to this whole new level of authenticity for them, I think, in my opinion. At least that's the vibe I got from the couple that I married. They really felt like this was a validating experience for them. So being a minister, I have a lot of pride in being able to provide that to them, you know, this level of authenticity where they could actually say, hey, I was married by the Satanic Temple. We are Satanists. Fuck off.
Yeah, I think that I caught. So for those of you who are on Instagram, you want to follow the Satanic Weddings Instagram, I think is what that's
Yes.
called. I follow that. One of my coven daughters, my craft sisters, her and her partner recently actually got married, I think by Thomas out at the
Oh my
temple.
gosh. Yes.
Yeah, and they took a pilgrimage out there for their TST wedding. And like we kind of did our own witch thing and then
Yeah.
sent them on their way, and then they did their lovely satanic thing, and
Awesome. Love it.
all the pictures are so iconic. The temple is beautiful.
Yeah. I haven't made it
Um,
up there yet. I really want to.
they did such a great job with my baby, so I'm happy about that.
Good.
Yeah, so you guys check out the Satanic Weddings. It's Satanic Weddings, right? Isn't it that what it's called?
Yeah, it's Satanic
Instagram.
Weddings on Instagram. Yeah.
And I saw, I think, the stream with you and Riley talking about the wedding that you did. So, like, was it this one your first wedding that you've officiated as a minister, or is this your first wedding not only as a minister but like ever?
It was the first one ever.
How was that?
Yeah. So it was like I kind of felt like double the pressure, right? Because I think it's one thing to be ordained through the fast track, you know, through the Universal Life Church, whatever. We're going to have an atheistic wedding, which all that is great, you know. But the fact that this was a special moment where a satanic couple wanted to be married by a Satanist who was ordained through the Satanic Temple. And I had never done a wedding before, so I was like, oh shit, what happens? You know, so then I started researching, and there's a lot of components that go into a wedding. I was very thankful that my couple were very chill. You know, there wasn't anything like super crazy. The bride was just walked down the aisle by her dad. I'm like, oh my God, do you have like a bridal procession? What is the, you know, what is the order? I need to know, blah, blah, blah. No, thankfully everything was pretty chill. But, you know, in that moment, I just spent hours researching into what went into a wedding. You know, and growing up, I never really thought that I would have a big wedding, so I didn't really care to learn about how weddings operated or what went into them. You know, ironically, I'm engaged now, as you could see. But I just never had that interest in that super big fancy wedding growing up, so I didn't know anything about weddings prior to this. So really, it was about buckling down and researching, you know, what went into it, like what what direction does the groom come in, and what cue does he have when he comes out with the rings, who's holding the rings, all that stuff that you have to think about, the logistics. It's essentially a stage play, right? We had this issue with the Black Mass where you need to block things out, for a ritual that's on stage. It's the same with the wedding. So we didn't have the opportunity to do that for this wedding. There was no wedding rehearsal. So that made me very nervous. And we winged it and we killed it, which was great. My couple was very, very awesome, very chill. And we just went up there and we winged it. I don't know how we did it, but it all worked out in the end. And I'm so grateful for that.
I would like to just piggyback on what you just said there in the sense that like how you feel about weddings and then now doing weddings. So I have like officially legally married 10 people now. And
Nice.
I absolutely love weddings.
Yes.
Did not do a wedding myself. Like literally just
Right.
signed paperwork, called it a day, babe.
Yeah.
I was like, that sounds like so much stress and anxiety. And I don't know if it's because like I'm a Libra sun ruled by Venus. But, like I love, love. And so being able to be part of other people's weddings and help them plan and, do stuff with the ordination, it's magical. It really is. And what a privilege and an honor for a couple to come to you and be like, we want you to be our minister.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had never met them prior to actually being at the physical wedding. We have a whole thing where people will send out requests for ministers, and they were one of the couples that requested a minister in Indiana. And since they are in New Albany, I was like an hour and a half away from them. I'm just like, well, why the hell not, right? If it's going to be someone, it might as well be me. And I had a really great experience with it. Would do it again. So yeah, it was cool.
So I think what I'm hearing is if you're in central southern Indiana, yeah?
Yes.
And you're looking for a satanic minister to do your wedding,
I'd be more than happy to.
we got one right here.
Yes. Yeah, we could do custom scripts, whatever you want. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance for my couple to do like a ritual. We talked about potentially doing like, one brings in a candle, the other one brings in a candle, and then they light the candle in the center. But we couldn't have an open flame at the venue. So yeah. But any ideas you guys have, we could do a custom script. Hit me up.
And there's so many great wedding rituals.
Yeah.
I mean, hand fastings, jumping the broom, wreathing ceremonies, unity candles, unity vases.
Sand.
Yes.
Yes. I love sand.
The exchanging of the rings is a ritual, really, even.
Right.
The garter, the bouquet, this thing. I know that in a lot of like Islamic weddings, the bride like doesn't. And this is true in Islamic weddings. This is true in a lot of Arab weddings. We don't really have like the bride, like this big moment, right? Where like the bride walks down or is walked down by her father.
Right.
Instead, like the bride and groom, basically there's like music and drums that are played. And then the bride and groom do like a grand entrance into the wedding together. And they like boot scoot and book as a couple down to the altar, essentially. And that's really popular in like a lot of Arab and Islamic kind of style weddings. So, I mean, also you can always make your own rituals. And I think that that's sometimes even more powerful is like something that's made by the couple for the couple. Yeah. Instead 100%. Of just doing stuff that we've done for the sake of it just being tradition. Like,
right. Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I think there's power in tradition, but I also think that there's also power in like making your own tradition.
Agreed.
So
yes, most definitely. That's interesting too. I didn't know that about Islamic or Arabic weddings. I think too, one of the reasons why I wasn't super into weddings prior to this is because it seems like there's some like trappings of patriarchy. You know what I mean? Like being given away by your father as a woman. It's just like, I'm not really yours to give away, though. Not an object.
So I feel that. I absolutely feel that. Growing up, I was always really into the idea of weddings because I'm a princess, naturally.
Fair
Um,
enough.
but then I got older and I was like, ooh, princess like comes with a price tag and I have to pay for that myself. Like,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
maybe I'm good.
Most definitely.
Maybe
Yeah.
we'll spend that money on like enjoying each other's company as opposed to just paying for a lavish party for everyone else that we won't even enjoy.
Yeah.
Because
Most
a lot of
definitely.
times that's the reality. Like the couple is so stressed out the entire time, the day of the wedding, that like it's really for everybody else.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the vibe, right? And I spoke to my fiance, we're engaged, and it's like, well, what do you want to do for our wedding? Unfortunately, I can't marry us in Indiana. If I could, I would. We have to have someone else marry us. But
Are you
it's
going to
like
have another Indiana satanic minister do your
I'm gonna have
wedding?
Riley
Uh-huh,
Phoebus.
uh-huh.
We
What's your guys' relationship? How did you guys meet?
actually met through TST Indiana.
Okay,
Yeah. So they joined back in 2018, I believe, and that's around the time I joined. And we just hung out, at events, got to know each other, and now we're like BFFs.
love Riley.
Yeah, me too.
Have you got anything in straight yet?
In the category of weddings, I don't really have a whole lot of input just because it's not something that me and my partners are fully able to enjoy because I'm part of a polycule. I'm in a polycube, actually. I have two husbands. Both of my husbands have a wife, so there's four of us. We have a child. And unfortunately, we are unable to all be actually married, which is a shame. However, I did perform a ritual for my husband and I that I called the soul binding ritual, where I basically said, hey, our souls are united and we're married now. The ritual was more elaborate than that. But we're also not like ring people. So we didn't really do a ring or anything like that. It was just an energetic exchange where we were knowledgeable of the fact that we were unified.
That's
And
awesome.
should the law ever change and polyamorous couples be able to marry, that will probably change. We will probably actually get married, like at a court or something like that. But for now, we're pretty happy with the way our family is structured. I will say, first of all, congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you.
Um,
I'm
and
excited.
for having only been a minister since April, you've done a lot.
Thank you. It feels like I've done a lot.
Yeah, that's a great accomplishment.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. I knew stepping into this role, it was going to be a lot of work, and I was ready to take that on. I felt like the uh, Satanic Temple community in Indiana really needed that, and I was more than happy to kind of take on that role. And it's also been very fulfilling. It's been a lot of work, but it's been very enriching mentally, emotionally, dare I say, spiritually. Um, yeah. But it's been fantastic so far, and I don't think I would trade it. I am a little worried about burnt out or getting burnt out, but hopefully, if I step back for a few days, I'll be able to jump back into it.
Could you tell us about some of the other things that you do as a minister, other than like, weddings and I definitely want to touch on the Black Mass, but are there any other things that you facilitate and do?
No, not really. Other than doing
What about
the
the unbaptisms?
yeah, so in the congregation in TST, Indiana, in our congregation, I am the ritual committee head. So all of the ritual stuff kind of is workshopped through our committee. And we do things like unbaptisms at Indy Pride. We had a ton of people come up for our unbaptisms. And unbaptisms are a very interesting ritual in that I personally feel I do not have a lot of connection with because I wasn't raised in a Christian household, but I see a lot of people are, and especially a lot of people who are at Pride and who are enjoying themselves at Pride. So that is a very popular ritual to perform at Pride, because it's not only liberating in the fact that they're celebrating their queerness, but now they could be, you know, kind of free from that Abrahamic trauma, symbolically, of course. So that's a very meaningful ritual that we put on at Pride, and anywhere else. It's not just Pride. So essentially, what happens is that they kind of all gather around our little tent table area, and we do, "You are now unbound from the chains of superstition." Let me put on my minister voice here. "You are now unbound from the chains of superstition." That wasn't very great, but, you know, we'll do another shot at it later. So yeah, that's a really fun ritual to perform. And they are, sometimes we have twine or, you know, like light rope that we carry around where their wrists are bound together. And at the end of the ritual, they're able to pull that rope apart and kind of physically, symbolically release themselves of that whatever religious trauma they had in the past. And I found that to be a very fulfilling and compelling ritual for other people. Not so much myself, but we had some people at Pride like tear up during it. Tears were actually shed, you know, during those baptisms.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think that says a lot, you know, not just to validating my experience as a minister and being able to provide people with that experience, but also just to the power of ritual in general. You know, whether you're a witch doing your own ritual, you know, you're experiencing that emotional catharsis, which is just amazing.
An interesting parallel that you might like to know between witchcraft and Satanism is there is a ritual that is presented by an author named Paul Hewson in a book called Mastering Witchcraft. It's basically a way to begin the process of being witched. But essentially the process is visualizing shackles and chains being removed from you as you say the Lord's Prayer backwards.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Something that I think Jasmyne and I should really make an episode on at some point, and I'd love to have you there for it for the discussion, is about blasphemy and magic. Because I was a little uncertain about how blasphemy could apply magically or spiritually. And the thing about blasphemy is that, at least how I've come to use it, is it's very cathartic. Like you've been talking about with catharsis, it's very healing for things like Abrahamic trauma. Sometimes you got to say, "God damn it."
Yeah.
In order to get past the yuckiness that's left behind. I was raised in the Spiritual Baptist Church, which spiritual Baptist.
She said, "I was raised in the Baptist church."
In the
I
Baptist church.
She said, "I was washed in the blood."
I was. And the Spiritual Baptist Church is a little bit different than like a Southern Baptist or anything like that. Mostly Spiritual Baptist is a lot of ladies in really impressive hats doing the work on each other. It's where a lot of hoodoo women are arranged and things like that. I was raised in hoodoo. And, you know, there's a little bit of trauma that can come along with that. I wouldn't say I have extreme Abrahamic trauma anymore because I do work with blasphemy and things like that. And in my practice, I do work heavily with what I would call infernal spirits.
Cool.
So the fact that you're able to provide people healing through that blasphemy, personally, I think that's really wonderful. And I think that's a beautiful thing that you provide.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think something else too that Zoey might be interested in, that even recently, so basically like my craft auntie runs this metaphysical store called Spiritual Gardens. I work there, I teach there, I do readings there. Anyway, y'all can come see me on the south side. Y'all know where it is. It's also online as well. But we also run a book club there. So our book club is called the Indie Witches Book Club. It's available through a Facebook group. You can join it and be part of the online discussion. You don't have to be local to us to be part of the online discussion. We meet up every other month, and we talk about the books that the community of the club votes upon. And then the months that we don't have an online meeting, we have an in-person meeting at the shop. And earlier this year, we read Jake Richards' book. I have it right here, Backwoods Witchcraft.
So
We read
cool.
this book, which is about Appalachian conjure, basically. And in his book, not that it's exclusive to this, but there's this kind of concept of like this black baptism, where talking about saying like the Lord's Prayer backwards, you basically get graveyard dirt from like a church graveyard, or churches always own graveyards or whatever. You guys know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you get graveyard from there and you get like a silver platter,
Oh
and
my
you go
gosh.
find yourself like a moving body of water, and you put the dirt on the platter and you stand sky clad, which is kind of like a witch's way of saying naked. And you stand in the moving body of water against the current, which I think is very symbolic. And then you allow the
Yes.
water to like wash over the graveyard dirt, and then you like rub the dirt all over you, like putrefying yourself, making yourself unholy. And you say the Lord's Prayer backwards, and then you like dip yourself into the oncoming current and like wash that off of yourself. And then you come back up and dedicate yourself to Satan. And
Wow.
in the book, a lot of these Appalachian witches were called like medicine folk or yarb doctors or root workers or whatever. And the witches were the ones who were in league with Satan. You know, they wouldn't consider themselves witches, even though they were doing the work, the craft, but they wouldn't necessarily call themselves witches. And then, so I wanted to mention that. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is, speaking about blasphemy, not only do I think that it's cathartic, but let's talk about apotheosis, because I think that that's a huge thing that witches such as like Astradia and I, of the left-hand path variety, of a folkloric variety, like apotheosis, becoming God, um, being the divine incarnate in the flesh, I think is something that I feel like we could also share with Satanists. And I feel like I would love to hear about your Black Mass as well. And if that, what does self deification look like to like a Satanist? Is that like tea?
Yeah, for me personally, I am not super big on self deification. I don't consider myself a god. I don't do any ritual work that kind of, ascribes myself godhood or whatever. At the end of the day, I'm an atheist. So a lot of the kind of God stuff it doesn't really jive with me. It doesn't do anything for me. So unfortunately, I don't think I have a lot of info regarding that. A lot of my satanic practice isn't self-deification. It's more so really having reverence to the fictional character of Lucifer, and having a lot of interest in that fictional mythological backdrop that he's presented in. But what about you? I'm interested in this now. Tell me about your own self-deification.
Okay. Yeah. Australia, you think we can both share?
Yeah, for sure. I think
I just need a second to catch my breath.
I'm sorry.
So for those that don't know, Jasmyne's struggling with getting over a little bit of a sickness, and it's affecting her breathing. So if she doesn't talk as much in this video, that's why, or in this live, that's why. So I do like the idea of apotheosis. For me, it's more about, I enjoy the idea of, if there is a higher than this, if there is a greater than this, if there is an ascension beyond this, I prefer the idea of saving myself than relying on some external force to do it for me. A lot of my witchcraft career, early on when I was younger, was spent giving my power away, because in and this is no tea, no shade to the Wiccan community, but this is what it was for me in the 90s and early 2000s. It was, you need to find yourself a patron or matron deity, you need to be devoted, you need to do this and that. And a piece of advice that I like to give people when they want to get into the occult, and specifically when they want to get into witchcraft, is you really need to understand yourself a little bit first before you go worrying about deities and things like that. I tell people, like, build an altar to yourself. Put things on that altar that represent you. What are your symbols? What are your holy colors? What are the things that make you more powerful? What makes you feel strong? What makes you feel inspired? Things like that. I think that these are important lessons to learn, especially in Apotheosis, because something with Apotheosis that I've learned, especially with my journey, because right now I'm definitely going through a sort of catabasis or a descent kind of work that I've been doing, and will continue to do through the winter up until spring, is that if you don't know yourself, the spirits will show you yourself. And, you know, speaking from maybe a psychological model or a less spiritual model would be that as you explore your own mind, the demons of your personality will make yourself aware of who you actually are and how to better accept the good parts of yourself, the bad parts of you. A lot of people want to call this shadow work, which personally, I think shadow work got kind of blown out of proportion. I don't really think it's quite as necessary as people make it sound, but it is a very powerful process. I don't necessarily know that, like, for me, I don't know that I necessarily see myself needing to become a deity, but I definitely, like, if I have any control over my ascension or my growth spiritually, I want to have control over that. Especially when it comes to, like, working with deity and things like that. For those that don't know, I have a fairly long-lasting relationship or working relationship with the goddess Hecate. A lot of people work with Hecate in this day and age. I've been working with her since I was, like, in my early 20s. And instead of being devoted, instead of being a devotee, instead of worshiping, something that I've found is for me, it's better to see these deities as teachers and learn from them, not to supplicate from them, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's largely how I work. Jasmine, do you want to talk about your process?
Yeah, thank you for letting me catch my breath there. So I view it more so as, like, because I kind of consider myself like a soft polytheist, as far as, like, if we had to assign ourselves religious labels. And, like, in my personal practice, that's kind of how I would label myself. And then in the Solar Court Coven that I'm a part of, we exclusively work with, like, the Dark Goddess current, which kind of, a lot of people maybe have heard of, like, the Maiden Mother Crone or the waxing full and waning moon cycles and the corresponding goddesses of those. But, like, a phase of the moon that's often not included in that triad is the dark moon, which would be like the Dark Mother sort of current. And so in our coven, we're devotees of the dark goddess archetype, which is viewed as like a universal cosmic current that we personify through Hecate, Isis, Sekhmet, Kali, Lilith. We are personifying this energy. We believe in the energy as literal, but not necessarily like sentient, but it's like a universal energy of war, of death, of prophecy, of fate, of chaos, of liberation. And different cultures have personified this energy and called it different names. But they're all linked. And so when I consider myself a soft polytheist, I'm saying, like, I view them as separate. Like, I don't think the Morrigan and Hecate are the same thing. I think that they're connected to the same current and that they're interpreted differently based off of their geographic location and language and culture. However, we kind of use self-deification in the sense of like not necessarily working with like as equals, more so as like personifying and embodying that energy and incarnating it into the flesh. And one of the ways of doing that is like, um, I don't know if you've heard of this, Australia. I'm very aware that you have, and for some of you watching this, you might have heard of this as well. But there's like a ceremonial ritual called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, and she's like a real popular ceremonial ritual. There's a lot of different variations. The like kind of OG variation per like Solomonic magic is like invoking archangels to control demons per King Solomon. However, like in more neo sort of craft spaces, these archangels have been swapped out for fill in the blank, whatever you want, you know? And so I kind of view self deification more in the sense of calling upon the names of the dark goddess energy current in order to become that. And so in my reality, and this doesn't mean that because I'm a living God, you're not. This doesn't mean that because I'm embracing my godhood that I'm exerting power over someone else's godhood, because I believe that we can all take the path of apotheosis if we so choose to. And like I consider the other path, or the right hand path, to be more so about the path of annihilation, which is about destroying the ego, and just kind of becoming source fuel, like destroying who you are at a core level completely. That's annihilation. That's not really, I feel like, in my ministry or any type of magic that I want to do. And so, yeah, it's about becoming a living embodiment of the archetype of the dark goddess current more specifically, but fill in the blank, you could pick whatever. Also the adversary, if you so chose. You could use, the unholy trinity between Satan, the devil, and Lucifer, and like kind of do an LBRP, or even like a star ruby ritual or the greater ritual of the hexagram, and, tweak it out that way if you wanted to. Like the star ruby ritual where they do like the Io pan and they do the horns, and like they put the horns of the devil or the horns of the witch god like basically on their head to like crown themselves in their virility and their adversarialness through like hand gestures, which is also found in like other spiritual practices as well, like sacred hand movements. On my TikTok, 3 obsidian eyes, you're not going to find a lot of educational stuff over there. You're going to mostly find thirst traps and shit posts. But you will find some educational stuff occasionally. And you'll find a ritual of me and some of my coven mates doing our LBRP ritual in the center dance floor area at the Witches Masquerade Ball this year in Louisville, Kentucky, that took place. And the way that we do it is like it's not really choreographed. The ritual isn't, because there's sacred hand gestures that are done, and each witch is leading a quadrant of the ritual. And so all the witches are paying attention to the other witches' hands as opposed to like what they're doing. And that's how we do our LBRP. We did that on the dance floor. So in terms of self-deification and apotheosis, that's how we experience it. It's about us elevating ourselves to godhood, to empower ourselves in our day-to-day life, to do the great work as witches, whether it be in the physical, the digital, or the astral. And I think that a lot of people hear like self-deification, they think of like narcissism with a capital N, but I really think that that's the path of annihilation talking. And I think that that's like right hand path dogma, and more specifically like Christian dogma, that's saying like you need to subjugate yourself, you need to push yourself down and submit.
Yeah, I think servitude or servitude is a primary attribute of that, lifestyle, the right hand path. But that's very cool. I mean, I could definitely vibe with that in terms that it makes me, thinking about it, it makes me feel like it's a celebration of my autonomy. It's a celebration of my individuality. I'm not subjecting myself to somebody else's idea of what I should be. I'm embracing my full human nature, as an individual person. So yeah, that's very cool. I could vibe with that.
I will say, despite my Gemini moon and me being somewhat academic, I'm really bad at describing things. A lot of my philosophies are also in line with Jasmyne's about the dark goddess and things like that. And my thought got completely derailed. You touched on something a second ago that my ADHD brain just yeeted out of my head.
It happens to me all the time. It'll come back to you after the stream.
It definitely will. And I'll probably ask you about it at that point. Oh, that's what it was. So, you know, coming from an atheistic standpoint, I mean, I'm not an atheist. I'm definitely more of a spirit model. But something that I used to do when I was working more secularly is if you have a desire to work with archetypal deity in a way that isn't religious, something I used to do is I used to view them as computer programs. And so you look at the archetypal nature of a deity, you look at what program it functions as, and you basically view yourself as a server, and you download those things into yourself. You embody those aspects not as a religious thing, but as a way to approach the world from a deific standpoint without it being religious. That was the other thing too, as you said something about servitude. That's always been a big issue with me, with the concept of servitude, with concepts of worship. I think devotion is fine. I think reverence is good. I think that some concepts of being a servant to the spirits, being a servant to the gods, that rubs me a little wrong, you know?
Yeah, same here, most definitely.
So I'll be the odd one out here in the sense that I have had some like what I consider to be like philosophical conversations, whether it be over wine or an Eddie or something, or not. But something that I have found is a lot of witches, more so, will say like, "Oh, I don't worship these gods." But when you talk to them about how they work with, it sounds a lot like how some people might consider worship. Because I kind of work within like a self-deification framework personally, and the way we kind of run things in SCC is when we are worshiping the dark goddess, we're worshiping and honoring the dark goddess current that is within us. So when we are serving her, we are serving ourselves, and we're also serving our community because we're all connected to this current that we share together. And when I think of servitude, not all gods require subjugation. Like, not all archetypes of divinity require you to completely lose who you fundamentally are and give up earthly pleasures.
Right.
I think that's like that's Yahweh asking you to completely enslave yourself to him, essentially, and be his mindless servant. To me, the dark goddess calls us to ignite the black flame within and carry that flame on and help other witches find their black flame within to empower themselves, liberate themselves. And I very much feel like that's what the witch father or the witch's devil has kind of been tasking me with personally in my journey with him, is like liberating myself and helping take the shackles off my brothers and sisters and siblings on the path of night as well, and helping them liberate themselves so they can liberate themselves and they can liberate others and we can live in liberation. So I think working in service to that, to me as a high priestess, I view it more as like the work I do with weddings, or the work we do with food drives, or the work we do with like the low cost animal shelter and spay neutering, right? Like, I'm serving the dark goddess current by doing this work, and I'm serving my community, and I don't feel like I'm being subjugated, nor do I feel like I'm giving my will over unconsensually. And I feel like, you know, people talk about, oh, sacrificing your soul to Satan, blah, blah, blah. Personally, I feel like the witch's devil doesn't want your soul and doesn't even want it if it's going to be given unwillingly. Like, I walk the path of night by choice to help support my community. And I'm speaking from like a witch's soft polytheistic perspective here. And so, yeah, service to me doesn't necessarily mean I'm subjugating myself to a God that's outside of myself, because the God is in me. So I'm, by doing the work, I'm serving myself and I'm serving my community.
And see, had someone presented me with the concept of worship and servitude in that way,
Yeah.
I think I would have had a very different view of it. And it's not that I don't feel the same way, because Jasmine and I, we've had many, many, many long discussions about these things. We are very, very similar in the way that we view things. I word things badly because I have a weird brain, but she and I view things very similarly. We do have a lot of differences as well. But yeah, definitely a very good point that you've made, Jazz.
Yeah, I think so too. And for me, that perspective is brand new. Listening to what you say, it makes perfect sense. But in kind of my own experience with having, Abrahamic religions and Christianity just kind of have a big stranglehold on everything and seep into everyone's lives, even if they're not super religious. Like, that is what I think about when I think of servitude and worship. It's, giving yourself away and becoming, essentially a slave to the Christian God.
Yeah, and talking about what you had just mentioned there with like that word religious, I recently just talked about this on TikTok because we had a video from our fall equinox ritual that like went kind of viral where this evangelizer came and was like trying to preach to us and disturb our ritual, which at that ritual we were literally doing a witch's dedication. So what they didn't realize they were doing is they really emboldened not only the witches in our coven but our participants to dedicate themselves to the craft and the spirit of the craft that lives within them and all around us, in the trees and the rocks and the grass, and he's all around us, like from the movie The Craft or whatever. But so anyway, someone commented on that thing, and like they were having a discourse with someone else, and they were basically saying how covens aren't religious. And so by her inserting her religion, it's kind of like null and void because covens aren't even religious, which there are witches out there that are atheistic. And I'm sure there's groups out there that call themselves covens that work in an atheistic framework. Like, I know vampire groups that like call themselves covens and they're not practicing witchcraft. Like, anyway, I personally will speak from my own experience and working within the SCC, like our covenry is actually quite religious. And I think that the word religious has become like kind of this dirty word that we associate specifically with Christianity. And it's actually a very fun social experiment if you want to embody the spirit of the adversary, whether it be at work or in any sort of social setting. People ask you, describe yourself in a few words. Say that you're religious. And when I tell people, oh, I'm extremely devout and religious, they take a look at me and they're like, but I'm not joking.
Right.
Because to me, the craft, I'm very religious about it. The holidays that I observe, the daily practices that I keep, I'm very religious about that. And you don't get to tell me that I'm not because I'm religious about my religion. Like,
right. Yeah. You walk the path, you do the work. Yeah. You
and
live
I think that
your religion.
Satanists, even though there's a lot of adversarialness and antithesis involved, like you can be a very devout Satanist. You can be devoted to the archetype of Satan. You can be devoted to liberation and self-empowerment.
Yes, absolutely. I 100% agree. And it's hard kind of as an atheist to really embrace these terms, because atheist spaces, especially online from my experience, could be really toxic. They're often filled with like debate bros or like fedora tipping bros that it's like, oh, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? And it's like, just chill the fuck out, dude. Like, witches are just chilling, doing their little bonfires and having fun, like,
I would also like
relax.
to add too, just in this conversation, that myself and literally every other witch I've ever met has never been interested in like a proof of evidence sort of conversation when it
Right.
comes to witchcraft. so my sister is an atheist, and like we have a great relationship. But one of the things that we often talk about is witchcraft, because she comes over to my house, and if you were to ever come to my house, Zoe, Estradia
I
will
would
tell you,
love to.
if you were to ever come to my house, there's no coming in my house and not knowing that a witch lives here. Like, you're not going to come in my house and not know. There's altars, there's thingamabobs, thingamajigs
Right.
everywhere. And, you know, I feel like because I view divinity in a self-deification framework, while I don't call myself and label myself an atheist, I feel like I can share a lot in common with atheists. And so I try to explain to her like how I view the reality of how magic works. And it's just, we always bump heads on that, because
Yeah.
she's like, well, show me the evidence. And I'm like, well, the evidence is I just told you.
Right.
Bada boom, bada bing makes me feel like this, turns my reality like that. And this happened. And I got results. And she's like, well, how do you know that's not a coincidence? And that's not just, I'm like, it could be, but it's
Right.
true to me. And that has power, that it's true to me. And
Yeah.
I've never once and piggybacking off of like our Ask a Witch thing, they want to act like witches are sitting up at their altars night after night praying that we stray Christians from their faith. We literally do not care what y'all are doing.
Right.
We have too much going on at our own altars to worry about what God you are and aren't serving, honey. And this happens frequently for me because working in kind of the craft community, working at a metaphysical store, but also bartending and being kind of in the queer indie community, I get a lot of queer atheists or my fellow queer siblings who maybe are Christian, who really want to go back and forth with me about the validity of paganism or witchcraft. I'm not interested in that conversation. I'm literally not interested.
Right.
I don't feel like I have anything to prove, and I don't have to say a damn thing. I'm not interested.
Yeah. No, I
And
can
that
totally see
pisses
that.
people off.
Right.
I can remember one instance where I was working and I was taking a smoke break outside, and this guy was like, "Oh, are you Jasmyne? Da 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 da. You're a high priestess, blah blah, whatever." I was like, "Yeah," and they were like, "Tell me about that." And I was like,
No.
"Not right now, no." And they were like, "What?" And I was like, "No."
Oh my God, you owe me a debate. Come
Yeah,
on.
pretty much. And they were like, "Well, I just want to talk to you about it because really I think it," and they basically further explained how, people are normally, when it comes to witches, they either think that we're, evil of the devil, of course, or we're very mentally unwell and need to be locked up somewhere and psychotic and schizophrenic, and there's a lot of very ableist rhetoric around mental health, and we're just crazy, right? Because we believe this. It's not Harry Potter,
Right.
and he was definitely more of that camp, and I'm just like you are welcome to believe that. You are welcome to think that I'm completely crazy. I do not need to explain to you how it's valid to me. So
Yeah. And for the longest time, I was in that camp. I would have described myself as a hard atheist where, even my mom, who is a very soft spiritualist, where it's like, well, you don't have any evidence of this. It's totally stupid. It's totally invalid. But I mean, what am I accomplishing by, saying that? And I wouldn't describe myself so much as a hardcore atheist anymore. I'm definitely a soft atheist, but I'm open-minded, to things. I know people have experiences. I can't explain what those experiences are, but I also don't want to invalidate their experience either. So I think we're all in the same boat, pedaling in the same direction.
And I think that's the way to go about it. I think that your atheism is completely valid. I have no interest in changing your mind, but if you want to talk about magic and spiritual stuff, I'm open to talking about it with you.
Yeah, and I'm totally open-minded. I don't. This is what I describe to my mom, who believes in spirits and stuff. I say I don't personally believe in that stuff because I don't have experience with it, and I don't necessarily believe that it's 100% possible, but I'm always open-minded, and I always acknowledge the fact that of course it could be possible, right? I mean, I can't say that. No one could prove that. So,
Well, so once we are no longer live, we're still going to be here all together. And there's a couple things I want to talk about with you off of air. So remind me that I
okay.
said that because I'm on my second glass of wine now. But one of the things that I want to say is at some of our rituals, because the SCC, we host 4 open rituals a year as far as the Sabbats go, the solar holidays, the major astrological and cross-quarter holidays. 4 of those are open, 4 of those are closed. I would love sometime, for you and Riley, if you're able to come make it out to one, because I feel like, and this does not represent all covens and this will not represent all witches. This is our variety of the craft. But I feel like Riley and I have talked about this too. For us working in like a self-deification framework, it's not so much about do we believe that we can make contact and weave magic with these spirits externally, because everything's internal. Like
Right.
everything that's going on at the ritual is like, and we believe that we're pulling this energy from within us and we're having that apotheosis and that catharsis in unison with our rituals. So we don't necessarily believe that like when we're invoking the spirit of X that it's going to manifest in the flesh physically in front of us right here
I see.
per se.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, let's talk about that
Yeah.
later. And we have a witches memorial actually coming up that we can talk about too. But let's talk about the Black Mass. We need to get into that.
Black Mass. Yeah, I am still exhausted from that event, even though it happened like 2 weeks ago.
Can you define first
Yeah.
what a Black Mass is?
So, I guess in a broader satanic context, a Black Mass is the inversion of a traditional Catholic Mass. It's essentially a big celebration of blasphemy. A lot of the Black Mass scripts that I see kind of take the Catholic Mass word for word and invert it, where, instead of the Lord's Prayer, it's Our Father who art in hell, hallowed be thy name, whatever. And it's all about, inverting the Christian symbols and being very blasphemous. I thought that was cool and interesting, but going back to the fact that I wasn't raised in a Christian household, I didn't really have that, I don't know what this means. I didn't really have that, that experience or trauma surrounding what that may have done to other people. Abrahamic trauma, right? So I struggled with this for a long time when I was writing the Black Mass. I'm like, well, I didn't come from a Christian household. I don't have Abrahamic trauma. Should I even be writing a Black Mass? Because that is what it seems to be letting go of for the most part. So instead, I really had a big moment where I had to do a lot of deep digging and introspection. And I came to this moment that even though I wasn't raised in Christianity, the broader society, it was still pushed on me by other people. And even though, I wasn't raised to fear Satan, the character still instilled a lot of fear into my family, especially my mom, who raised me as a single mom, so, and just the word Satan, it makes people very visibly afraid and nervous. So I had this big cathartic moment, right, where I was coming out to her as a Satanist, and I remember her saying, she's like, well, how can you be a Satanist? You're a good person, right? Like, but that was it. That was the moment for me, right? How can you be a Satanist? You're a good person. That was my personal blasphemy.
Right, like being bad and being a Satanist are
Right.
somehow synonymous.
Right, exactly. So my black mass, the black mass that I wrote, was to celebrate Satan as a hero, because really that's what I see Satan as. You know, the fallen angel Lucifer, he's a hero, and he should be seen as one. He stood up to a bully. He did the right thing, and he was punished gruesomely for it and horrifically for it. So my black mass was this big cathartic celebration of the character of Satan, and I think it went really well. I haven't read all the feedback yet. I know Riley's compiling all the feedback for me. um, but I had a lot of fun, and I think it was deeper and more meaningful to me, and hopefully to other people who were there, who experienced it. And so, you know, it could have just been so easy for me to take like a Catholic script and invert it and do the whole shebang. But I hope by adding that personal touch and kind of adding my own blasphemous moment to it, it made it a little bit more meaningful.
I would love to attend something like that at some point.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jasmyne, she said this earlier, she would love to attend something like that at some point. So if you have another one in the near distant future, we would love to attend, because that sounds really excellent.
Thank you.
You know, I'm right there with you. I view Satan, Lucifer, the devil as a hero, and a source of inspiration, and a source of, you know, people look at pride as a sin, and I look at it as a source of strength. Like, have confidence, have pride in yourself, you know,
Right.
seek these things in the devil. And funny enough, recently I was doing some study on mythology and aspects of Hecate. And I noted that there were some aspects of Hecate that were very similar to aspects of Lucifer as the enlightener, as bringing light to people, bringing people knowledge and understanding. Jasmyne and I have had a conversation a couple times about my feelings about the story of Adam and Eve, and how I feel like Eve eating from the tree of good and evil, or the tree of knowledge, was her choosing knowledge over subjugation.
Yes.
And to me, in that story, though Adam and Eve get kicked out of Eden, I see Lucifer as the hero of that story, because he gave them knowledge. He gave them, to me, he gave them witchcraft. He gave them that fire that allowed them to break their shackles and leave the paradise that they were trapped in.
Right. And it's interesting you bring that up, because there was a lot of lines referencing the Genesis story in my Black Mass. You know, it kind of started off explaining that through this mythology, humans were created, but they were left naked and alone in this vivarium, you know, by a cruel and absent God. And it wasn't until the serpent, Satan or Lucifer, came along and offered them a ticket out, essentially, that we as a species, mythologically speaking, became liberated. And I love taking the archetype of Eve and just saying, like, instead of being the first human to sin, she was the first human to attain enlightenment. And that pisses a lot of Christian patriarchs off, which I love.
I love that. That's how I feel about Eve as well. I see
yes.
that vein as well.
Awesome.
Purr.
Can we get a Hail Eve?
Hail Eve.
Hail Eve.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I think my ideas of Eve, I mean, as Shady and I have talked about her a lot. Like, you know, we've gone back and forth with the gossip about her, if you will. And like, I guess she's all right.
The way
I
this
definitely
conversation started, by the way, is really ridiculous. There's a meme that exists where it says something to the effect of,
be Lilith, never Eve.
and that meme
Aww.
makes me so angry, because it's like, it's because in some of the Genesis stories, the serpent is Lilith.
I see.
And so it kind of interchanges, but the idea is, my whole thing is, why are we crapping on the image of Eve as someone who maybe she appeared as a more submissive woman or something like that, but ultimately she made the decision to eat the apple or whatever it was that was, you know, to eat of the tree of good and evil, or the tree of knowledge. And to me, that was a more important takeaway. It's like women come in all shapes and sizes. Not every woman is going to be a Lilith. Some women are going to be an Eve, but both are equally powerful.
I completely agree. And that's why I don't really connect so much with the Lilith character, even though I have a lot of respect and reverence for the Lilith character. I connect more towards like, well, I don't want to be a fedora tipper, but like the intellectual liberation and, you know, more like the emotional intellectual liberation versus the sexual liberation, which, you know, sexual liberation is 100% perfectly valid, but I just connect more with Eve in that aspect.
Same.
Yeah.
I very much connect with Lilith, and I know it's going to come as a shock to everyone in the room. I'm actually currently working on a blood ritual dedication piece on my calf to her, you know, like a modern day tattoo.
It's
Cool.
She's kind of like Lilith, but she's also the Scarlet Babylon, the sacred whore. So she's
Very
kind
cool.
of both. And she's kind of like an infernalized Mary, but she's also draconian per me being a nerd and liking the Diablo franchise. So she's got like the draconian aspects to her.
Sick.
And in her Abrahamic kind of origin, she's like a wind fury spirit, because Lilith has existed before even the Abrahamic religions were even there. And I feel like, in terms of the meme of like, be Lilith, never Eve, first of all, I just think it's cringe and I love it. Like, because I'm so here for the cringe. Like, we're the daughters of the witches you couldn't burn. Cringe, babes. Cringe. Or like, we're the daughters of the geese that hissed at you in the Walmart parking lot. Cringe.
Geese are
We're the
scary.
daughters of the Baja you couldn't blast.
Exactly.
Oh my god, I've never heard of that one. That is so funny.
But yeah, I kind of viewed the meme more like Lilith to me personally was the blueprint. And like Eve was made to be subservient. Now, in the interpretation that Estradia is talking about, my gnosis on that is that Lilith, the dark goddess that I'm connected to and that I am, I should say, hot girls don't shit on other hot girls. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like that's not a very Lilithian thing. Like girl on girl crime? No.
Right.
So it's not a don't be this, be this. That's like pick me energy.
Right.
That's not
right.
Lilith
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah. Why pit Lilith and Eve against each other when they should
Exactly.
really be going up against the biggest patriarch of them all, which is Yahweh, right?
Per.
And I want to cite that Eve being made for subservientness and choosing to say fuck that and eat from the tree and be liberated anyway makes her a pretty big badass.
I agree.
For sure. It's almost like Jasmine on this channel, you're the Lilith of this channel and I'm the Eve.
I love that.
Oh, there we go.
Mostly because I'm a fresh young maiden.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's a joke between she and I because some of you might not know this, and that's totally fine if you don't. I'm almost 40. Witchcraft does wondrous things.
Are you bathing in that virgin blood?
Well, I can't reveal my secrets.
Yeah, and don't let these cat ears fool you. I'm actually like a Time Lord draconian whore.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm turning 30 this December, so that's fun.
Yeah.
I'm a baby.
Come on, 30.
Come on, 30.
Come on, 30.
Come on, 30. I feel like I'm gonna shed it like a cicada. You know what I mean? Shed my 20s.
That sounds like it would be really like pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just shed it all off.
Right. I think the 20s era it's gone and now it's done and I'm ready to move on. So
I would love, Zoey, to hear some maybe like misconceptions you think that people might have about Satanists, and also like how would you define the difference between a Satanist and like a temple Satanist?
Yeah, so as far as misconceptions go, I would definitely say a common one that I often get and that a lot of us get in, the Indiana congregation is that we worship Satan as a literal deity. That's most of the common one. And for some reason, we get a ton of questions of like, well, where does evil come from? How do you explain evil? How do you explain crime? It's like, I don't have any answers to those questions. So for the most part, in my experience, the common misconception is that there's a comment that says a turtle made it to the water. That distracted me for a second.
I'm sorry. I might be pinning some comments here. Don't mind me.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, that's a very cute comment, though. I like it. It's a good image.
I think this is from like it's a World of Warcraft reference. Another turtle made it to the water.
Oh, okay. But
Jasmine and
yeah,
I are WoW nerds, by the way.
yeah. I feel bad because I describe myself as a nerd, but I don't play World of Warcraft, which big shame on me. I probably
Yet.
should.
You don't play World of Warcraft yet.
Be warned, Jasmine will bully you into playing World of Warcraft. She did it to me. I played it for many years and then I stopped. And then recently she was like, oh, you're going to play. And she just bullied me into playing. So now I'm playing it again. So
that's so funny. Yeah. So that's really the main misconception that I run into. As far as the difference between temple Satanists, I like to call it romantic Satanists or romantic Satanism, and other forms of Satanism. I'll be honest, I don't really have a lot of experience with other Satanists outside of my own congregation, which is bad on me. I definitely should. But I know some people who describe themselves as Satanists could be on the theistic side, or maybe they're more LaVeyan Satanists where they belong to the Church of Satan versus TST. I know from my limited knowledge of the Church of Satan that they're more kind of into Satan as like this carnal, primal aspect of humanity. They are atheistic and non-theistic Satanists as well, but I think their Satan is a bit more broad, versus romantic Satanism, where our Satan is a character that you could kind of point to, but theirs is like a very carnal, bestial, like, oh, man is an animal, and we're all connected primally in the satanic way. If that makes any sense. I know that was word vomit, but those are the differences that I have seen in my experience.
That makes a lot of sense. Actually.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Awesome.
Also, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I also play Dungeons and Dragons, so
hell yes.
I see you.
Awesome.
One of my craft daughters.
Blood, Sweat, and Steel. I don't know why I said Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Sorry, Blood, Sweat, and Steel.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears. One of my craft daughters and coven mates leads a D&D campaign every Wednesday that like I'm just waiting to crash, and just be a public enemy number one.
I love it. My fiance is really into tabletop games, and he tried to get me into it, but I just, oh man, you guys, it is so long, and my attention span is so short. I can't do it. I just can't do it.
What about plugging maybe some of like your work or like your causes? Like I will get some links from you and put those links in the description of this video. So if people are watching and if you've currently made it to this part in the stream, whether you're watching it now or as a replay, comment down below 666 to let us know that like you've either watched the entirety of this replay or that you've made it to this part now. So comment down below 666. But I will put all of Zoey's links in the description. But kind of let them know like what events do you have coming up, if any? Like, do we have another Black Mass happening soon? Where can they find you on social media? Yeah,
absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at the Sphinx Den. That is the Sphinx, SPHINX Den. That is my primary non-satanic Twitter, where I post kind of more PG stuff. And then if you want to follow my satanic Twitter, it is at Infernal Zoey. That's where I post like satanic art, ramblings, hot takes, more 18 plus oriented stuff. Sometimes I'll do, adult art and post it there, and you could see all the cool stuff. I do have Instagram, but I do ignore Instagram often, which is bad on me. So the handles are the same. It's at the Sphinx Den and Infernal Zoey on Instagram. And that's pretty much it for my social media presence. I'm a hermit. If you also want to add me on Facebook, it's Zoey Inferni. Feel free. I will add you, and we will be the bestest of friends. As for events, we don't have any public events coming up for TST Indiana. But be sure to check out our Facebook page. You can look us up. It's the Satanic Temple Indiana. And we post announcements regarding public-facing events like Black Masses, or when we're at Pride events, or when we're doing like donation drives. You will definitely be able to know through our Facebook page.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And make sure after the stream that in our messenger chat, you just like send me whatever links and I will absolutely put them in the description.
Awesome.
So do you guys do private events as well? Because you said we don't have any public events. So are there also events for members that you guys have?
Yeah, so we do on occasion have members only events like holiday parties. They're more intimate, and it's like a deeper experience, a connection where kind of friends are getting together and having a holiday time together.
Covens do that too.
Yeah, right.
I need to know. Are there satanic potlucks?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
That fills me with so much joy.
Yes, and they are amazing.
I've had quite a few satanic friends over the course of my lifetime, and all of them have been wonderful people and wonderful cooks.
Yes. Actually,
I got to partake in one of Riley's satanic potlucks, and it was chef's kiss.
Yeah. We had a potluck for our Hounds of Hell drive, Lunch with Lucifer, which was public. And some of the congregation members, they brought a whole buffet.
Throw down.
Yeah. And it's like someone made vegan pulled pork out of jackfruit. It was delicious. They're always conscious about vegan options. And yeah, it was just amazing. So anytime you get a chance to join a satanic potluck, do it. It's better than a Christian one.
I imagine so. Those church ladies don't know how to cook.
What could you maybe tell some people, Zoey, too, about maybe if they're watching and if they're interested in maybe getting involved with the Indiana TST congregation? What does that look like? How do they become a member? What does membership look like? Can you talk any about that?
Oh, sure. So we mostly have a big Facebook presence. You should be able to search. There is a public forum on Facebook. If you search the Satanic Temple Indiana, you could join. It's for non-members who are interested in membership. And we post a lot of things there regarding steps, how to become a member. So that's a good way to get started. After you do that, there's a event requirement that you have to meet. So it's either one in-person event and 2 virtual events. And then after that, you are interviewed, and then you kind of go on from there. So it's a pretty simple process, but we want to make sure that we kind of get to know you a little bit before we accept, you into the congregation. Primarily as a means of safety. We have a lot of marginalized members in our congregation, and we just don't want to let any willy-nilly person in. But if you're cool and chill, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to become a member. And if you're interested, definitely join the forum, because that's where we post most of our stuff.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll probably stay on here for a few more minutes or so. If any of you watching this live have any questions, and maybe we can kind of go through the chat here and see if we've gotten some questions already. But if any of you guys have any questions for Zoey, and you want to hear Zoey's satanic perspective, comment down below and let us know.
I just need to say that yet again, me and Nocturnal are on the same page. They do not season anything.
They won't hold your plate, or Satanists won't hold your plate hostage with a sermon.
Here's a question here, which I think we kind of touched on. So there are some open, closed. Are there closed rituals, or are you guys not really doing rituals closed? Can you say, I think the reason why I'm asking that is in a lot of witch spaces, we have this concept that we call like the fourth power. And so the fourth power is something that's invoked sometimes to where we can't give information out to those who are not initiates. So do you do rituals exclusively for the public, or do you guys also do rituals in private? I think is what Canadian's asking.
It's a mix. We do public-facing rituals like the Black Mass and the unbaptism. But if we have a need or a feeling to do a ritual in private, then we could do that as well. So for the most part, it kind of feeds into what the congregation needs, and to what we want to do for the public, if that makes sense. We do both.
Yeah. Wiccan Mohan says, great video and topic. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it. I was super stoked when Zoey agreed to come on, because I just feel like as LHP sort of leaning trad sort of influenced witches, I think that there's a lot of overlap with Satanists. And I feel like through my own experience, for the most part, like I haven't really dealt with a lot of like really obnoxious Christians. I've dealt personally more with like really obnoxious atheists and Satanists, more so.
I could see that.
And maybe on the other side of the fence, like there are some really annoying witches that Satanists have dealt with or whatever. And so I felt like us kind of collaborating just like made sense, because I think that there's a lot more commonality that we share.
Yeah, I think we have a shared history too. And Satanists kind of use the symbol of the witch as the dangers of persecution, of religious persecution. So there's definitely a kinship that I personally feel as a Satanist that I feel with witches.
Blood, Sweat, and Steel commented this, Australia. Maybe you can kind of comment on this. Personally, the only Abrahamic figure that relates to my practice in any way would be Tubal Cain, and even that is very obscure.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of talk about?
Yeah, Tubal Cain is a figure that appears very heavily in Cochrane-based traditional witchcraft. As you can see, we are the Daughters of Cain. We kind of took that name for the sake of like all the versions of Cain, but as Cain being, the first blasphemer, the first, the original murderer, and all of those naughty things that people associate with Cain, vampirism, witches, and all of that. But yeah, I think for me personally, I have delt's not the right word. I have utilized the archetype of a few Abrahamic characters from Abrahamic mythology and things like that. So yeah, I get that. Zoey, you do have a question in the comments here from the nerdy warlock. Dumb question. No such thing as a dumb question. But do you like Dante's Divine Comedy?
I do.
Same.
It's good shit.
Did you think Paradisia was boring? Because I thought it was boring.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paradisia was not it for me.
Awesome. These are great comments. Thank you.
We're building a great little community here. Jasmyne has a lot of people in her community that are really awesome.
Yeah. Very cool. I need to hang out with witches more.
We're fun.
Yeah. Love it.
Zoey, do you have any thoughts on this? Like, how would you define evocation versus invocation? Do you have any thoughts? Like, do you have anything to add to that question?
I do not. Evocation versus invocation. Go ahead. I
was just going to say, Blood, Sweat, and Steel. I don't know if you're asking Australia and I, or if you're asking Zoey, but like a quick and dirty explanation that I would give you from my perspective is when I'm invoking something, I'm usually bringing something in and I'm inviting it. And when I'm evoking something, I'm pushing something away or I'm pushing it towards the exit. That's just like my working interpretation of that within my magic. If I'm invoking something, I'm bringing something into space. I'm inviting it. I'm invoking it in, um, maybe through the rites of like apotheosis. And if I'm evoking something, I'm like getting rid of it and banishing it. That's me.
I have a very different view of that. For me, invocation is working externally, whereas invocation is working internally.
Hmm.
To
Yeah,
put it-
I know. Sorry, I know in my own satanic practice, there's a lot of invocation of the archetype of Satan. So while we do rituals, that's a pretty big part of our ritual practice is invoking that archetype of Satan.
Invoking it internally or invoking it externally?
Ooh, I think for the most part so far what I've experienced is internally, but it would be interesting to get the opposite of that.
Let's see. The Neon Cicada asks, how do you feel about the depiction of witches in movies?
Ooh. Is that for me or?
I think that could be for any of us, but how do you feel about the depiction of witches in movies?
You know, the first movie that comes to mind is The Witch.
I love that movie. I want to
Yeah.
get Black Phillip tattooed on my leg, like
Yeah.
for real.
Yeah, I see a lot of Satanists use Black Phillip as a symbol. And I have like a love-hate relationship with it because the witch is very empowering, but it's also kind of, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I
What
would
is
have to,
it, Zoe? Say it.
I feel
It
like,
was boring. It was a boring movie.
yeah.
It was boring, Jasmine.
Can't relate. Even though I have, contracted Miss Rona several times, I've maintained my taste. And so the movie was elegant. It was wonderful. It was a delight.
Yeah,
Okay.
the ending though was just awesome.
The ending of that movie is fantastic. I do love the
Yeah.
ending of the movie.
All the
It's
cute
like-
little sayings, the Pickety Witch of the Woods.
Yeah.
okay. The scenes with the scenes that actually actively involved witchcraft, yes. But all the parts where it's just like these boring Puritans on a farm going insane,
See, it was the
Although-
aestheticism for me because when it got to the point where the witch had the baby and was like,
Oh my gosh.
with
Yeah.
and was kind of, and then and then kind of came out and she was like transformed. Honey, I was like,
Yeah.
if only it could be that easy. Honey.
I mean, some of us are staying young eternally, so
Yeah. 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 Well, I think that was part of my not dislike of it, but the whole witches eating babies thing,
Yeah.
that was a thing in that movie.
Infanticide, right?
Yes.
That's the word.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
that is-
Sacrificing babies. That's a big satanic panic trope that is often thrown around.
That actually kind of steers us into another question that was asked by the Nerdy Warlock. Are there any misconceptions about Satanism in pop culture that you actually wish were true?
That I actually wish were true. What an interesting question.
I thought that was a cool question too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Maybe that we're all rich. I don't know if that's a misconception. I don't know. I'm not rich. I'm dirt poor. That we have all this sway and influence over people. There's always a satanic cabal in control somewhere, and it's like, man, if I had a thread of that influence, I think I would be a little bit happier, right?
I think the thing I'd say that I would want to be true is like how some of these like satanic cults and have all these like grand sprawling temples and things like that, like underground, and like all of these priests and whatnot of Satan like get all these cool powers. Like that'd be fun.
Yeah, right. Like
infernal powers.
right. Like if the power and the influence from the satanic panic were actually real, it would be, well, it would enrich my life. I'd be able to get out of this shanty little 2-bedroom apartment and maybe get a nice house somewhere. That would be
See,
nice.
like in the realty world, you just call that a cozy 2-bedroom bungalow.
It's cozy.
It's cozy.
It is definitely cozy, but I'd be needing some more space in here.
A cozy chateau.
Well, I want to thank everyone in the chat for coming out and making the live. Really appreciate your guys' like support and your amazing questions. If you're watching this as a replay and if you have any questions, you can still feel free to leave them down below, and I will try to kind of forward them over to Zoey, like if they come in, as they come in. And Zoey, like, thank you so much for being willing to come on the show. Like, I know that sometimes maybe in the media, like Satanists can kind of get the shit into the stick, and I appreciate you coming out like onto my platform and talking about your satanic experience and your satanic ministry. And yeah, thank you so much, Estradia, for being my co-host on Daughters of Cain and spreading this unholy blasphemy and igniting the black flame within. Like,
awesome. Love it. Thank you to both of you for providing me with this platform. It was very fun. I had a great time, and yeah,
we loved having you. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, maybe you guys comment down below if Zoey has to come back, because we do these frequent live streams and we have some themes coming up. Like, we're going to talk about 28 Days Haunted. Next week I'll be on with my coven, my craft daughter and coven sister. Not for Daughters of Cain, but we'll be looking at Eileen Wuornos's natal chart and kind of talking about that true crime case and everything that's involved there. The week after that, the Nerdy Warlock, who was commenting earlier, guys, go check out their channel. The Nerdy Warlock and some other content creators are going to be on my channel, and we're going to be doing an episode of Do All Witches Think the Same, which is like a drinking game show live. So the next 2 weeks, there won't be a Daughters of Cain. However, you will still find Estradia in the chat, as she will be moderating. So it's not like she's going anywhere. She'll still be here. Then the following week, Daughters of Cain, after those 2 shows, Daughters of Cain will be coming back. And we have some themes already planned about what we want to cover, like 28 Days Haunted. We also want to do like a folkloric winter solstice episode. However, we also just want to have like some casual kikis. So maybe we'll be able to get Zoey back for one of those, where we can just like kiki and rant, you know, and like drink alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverages and just complain into the void together.
I would love.
Maybe you could ask us questions that you have about witchcraft.
I would love that. I would love to learn more. I would also, I think, love to be on like a reaction video, like witches and Satanists react to, you know, whatever.
Infernal baddies react to.
Infernal baddies, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I've talked to Riley as well, and like I want to get them on here also. Yes. So maybe after I bully Riley into coming onto the platform. Maybe then the 2 of us and the 2 of you, we can do like a back and forth discourse about Satanists and witches. Yeah, we'll have to talk when we end this air. But yeah, thank you guys all so much. We're going to wrap this up. We're going to close this out. So blessed be, hail Satan, and I'll see you in hell.
Hail Satan.